it seems like there is a cultural shift in relation to obesity and the way that we view it. I don't know if you guys, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in the news. Things like different celebrities that talk about it regularly, that it's almost become part of their brand that they are obese. And then you've got, different celebrity trainers. I know there was a bunch of controversy with Biggest Loser and the folks that go through that and how they gain weight back after the fact because some of the things, the lifestyle changes they were making were not sustainable. And anyway, it's a big, complicated topic. What are your thoughts? What's going on here?
Yeah. This is a huge one. I think that
a lot of directions to go.
Yeah. In some sense, we're surrounded by it every day. Especially in the pharmacy with the increase of I would say there was a massive spike, at least in back orders of the new weight loss medications
on almost all of them.
Really?
Yeah. So it's just whether you're consciously thinking about this or not, it's very much a part of our world.
Yeah.
So what do we think? I would say, to kind of echo what you already said, the perception of obesity has started to shift. And we're obviously a little more biased. Like I'm a little more focused on the fitness end of things, and we work in healthcare. So we're going to see the medicalized view and definition of obesity and how that's changed and how that's crept into the mainstream. And so kind of what I mean by that is growing up, it seemed like obesity was viewed more as this failure in willpower, like on behalf of the individual.
It's very shameful.
It felt that way for, I don't know how that kind of came about, but it just seemingly felt like it was more of a finger pointing type thing.
Yeah.
At least some years back. And now again, the medicalized view of obesity as a disease and all of that, again, is what's made its way into these companies, into conversations. And so I think that there is a reactionary acceptance of obesity and, carrying excess body fat. And so it's just crazy how something that truly exists on a spectrum has now just become so extreme one way or the other.
With I had a pastor once talked about pendulamic propensity, that humans don't like existing in the middle. We like to swing to far extremes, whether it's politics or music or obesity, that we go hard one way or the other. So as we pull down the shame and stigma of obesity, it's going the other way, and now we have things like fat pride or body positivity.
Yeah.
Even a blend of that, like I think just the society that we're in nowadays, it's become make sure we're accepting people with mental problems. Let's be more accepting of therapy. I think those are all good things.
Yeah.
Let's be accepting of obese people. It's really, I know when I was a kid, like obese kids got made fun of all the time. You're looking back at some of those things, and what that does psychologically. So when you look at it that way, the general societal acceptance has benefits psychologically, especially when we're talking about kids, because there are times when kids, my kid has a sweet tooth. I know if I wasn't as knowledgeable as I am just relatively about food and diet, etc., how much, or if maybe I had my kids 30, 40 years ago when these things weren't as much out there, and you just start giving him chocolate all the time, and to use that example, or Doritos, or all kind of food that's going to be unhealthy for him weight wise, and he gets used to eating those things, and then they become comfort foods for him, and all soothing and all those things as he grow up. How much of that is your environment around you that sets you up to be obese? And now they are finding so many things though that do have to do with the genetics. Say, hey, my mom didn't do that stuff, or I didn't eat like that, or I didn't give my kid that. Why is he obese at 8 years old? Those things. So I do think that there's psychological benefit to accepting obese people, to make sure that those things. I think that goes back to
and that's
the pendulum.
One of the things that we should absolutely say is in terms of acceptance, in terms of value and worth, perhaps this needed to be said really loudly and very clearly.
Yeah.
Your value and worth as a human being has nothing to do with your weight or your mental status or your job or profession or bank account or anything else. None of that is up for debate. You are a valuable human being made by God in his image, full stop. So then beyond that, the conversation of, okay, so what is healthy?
Yeah. And I think even for myself, I mean, I'm not at the weight that I want to be.
Sure.
You know? We have video here. I'm not, where I was 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And so when I look at things like that, I know for me, seeing a picture of myself or getting on the scale, that's a blend of motivation.
Yeah.
It's also is a little bit disconcerting. It's that blend. I'm going to be 40 soon.
Yeah.
I want to be as healthy as I can be. So I'm around for my kids. You start really going into all that. Do you have responsibility to your kids to be healthy? Weight wise, there's so many different angles. But does that mean you have to be depressed about it and never look at yourself in the mirror and not be able to go shopping for clothes because it makes you so sad or get on an airplane? You know what I mean? Like the balance of that is so hard to strike because I do think having motivation to be healthy for yourself and for your family and for your kids is a good thing. And being told that being overweight is bad has benefits to it. It can be motivating, but then if the pendulum swings the other way,
Right. Well, and that's just it. You are valuable as a human. You have value and worth. And because of that, we want you to be healthy. We want you to be around longer, and more able to engage in all of the things that make life worthwhile. And part of that is eating, and part of that is moving, and part of that is all these different things. And so how do we encourage people to be healthy without shaming them for where they are?
Yeah. I truly, again, to kind of go back to more of like a lot of these overarching body definitions of obesity and kind of why we are where we are today. I think like that's, if you're talking with a patient, if you're talking with a client, if you're talking with a sibling or whatever about obesity, I think it is so important to see that these definitions are making their way into the lay population. Obesity is a disease caused by a complex interplay among genetics, the environment, and many other factors. That's a very, very simple definition, but it says everything. And then also, if you even look at how some of the barbell medicine guys look at this, the excess body weight and body fat is a hallmark sign of obesity. Obesity is not the actual body fat accumulation, but the actual underlying disease process that's occurring. So if we can just have this conversation starting from a different point, like in 1995, the conversation just was not starting there.
Right.
But what we're dancing around and kind of coming to is that's where you start the conversation. Obesity is not the body fat. It is a characteristic of what's happening. It's the complex interplay of your environment, your genetics, maybe a little personal responsibility.
Right.
It's all of those things at once, instead of just it was in this one bucket for the longest time. But I think that allows us to have a better we kind of are on the same page, but it allows you to have a better conversation with others about it.
Yes, because I think it's a very individualized approach.
Yeah.
If you are speaking to somebody in the pharmacy or a family member or as a coach or as a consulting, I think that when you have the conversation with somebody, if they come in saying, I'm very motivated, I know I can do this, I've been, it's only been a couple years, I know that I don't have genetic dispositions of being overweight, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Then I think you can be a little more hard charging about what you do versus somebody that comes in, I've been overweight since I was 5 and I've never worked out, I've never done anything, I've always, that I'm also very down about it. If I'm being honest, it's depressing to me. I suffer, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think then your approach with that person is very different in terms of what you do. Maybe it's more baby steps and it's a little more coddling so I just think it's a very individualized approach.
Yeah.
And societally, when you're talking about headlines and magazines and stuff, of course, it's going to keep swinging. It's going to go.
It's funny with healthcare that the most interesting part and often the most separating factor among clinicians is kind of what Joey's saying is the conversations, the behavioral change conversations that you have with people and meeting people exactly where they are and how important the underlying psychology is and what their level of motivation is going into whatever change they're trying to make or whatever therapy they're starting or whatever, whether it's obesity or not. It's just funny how that's kind of it's like what we always kind of circle back to.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily the disease states themselves, but where are we starting these conversations?
I know my wife, because of course, culturally speaking, it's more acceptable culturally for a man to be overweight than it is for a woman.
Definitely.
Generally speaking, and certainly in the media. But I know my wife, one of her big frustrations is because she looks at it and she goes, yes, seeing the 00 in all the things is very frustrating as a real human being who's had babies and all those sorts of things. Like it's just that's not realistic. But at the same time, when the pendulum swings real hard and you've got somebody that's 400 pounds going, I'm perfectly healthy. I'm perfect the way I am. You go, it's not that you are a perfect, valuable human. Also, you could be healthier. That is not a healthy state to live in long-term, right? Like, how do we openly discuss that we want you to live longer, and you will almost certainly live shorter, with that sort of body type. Like, is there a way to have that conversation without somebody feeling stigmatized?
That's really tough.
Yeah.
And again, that's another, case by case.
Yes,
Yeah.
individualized.
I guess you're right.
And I think eventually you get there, but I think the problem was, the kind of like the finger pointing mentality isn't just like the obesity is bad. So clearly you did something to get where you were.
You did bad. Yeah.
The other side of that is we were also saying, hey, look at this long list of things that obesity can cause. Like, I think those things were packaged in the same conversation.
Right.
And while the issues that can arise from obesity are very much real and worth considering, it's just it's about how you sort of package those. If you're saying, hey man, this is what you get for doing X, Y, and Z for 10 years, and look what all this can cause.
Yeah.
I think those were the conversations for so long.
Yeah.
Instead of like, look, it is a disease. We know that this is complex, and we know that these are the things that it can cause. And all we're doing is trying to help you move the needle. Here are some things that can help you move the needle, just like you want to move the needle by taking your, antihypertensives or your, cholesterol lowering medications or your antidepressant, whatever it is. That's all that this is just trying to get people to be in the driver's seat of moving the needle of whatever disease is.
Getting toward healthy.
Yes, and we can have obesity discussions in the same conversation as we can with hypertension or cancer.
Because so many of those issues do come from being overweight and obese, but you go into a doctor's office and they're churning through patients, and they're just trying to get through their day. And the talk becomes, hey, you need to lose some weight, but the focus and where we're going to end this is I'm going to put you on a cholesterol medication because we've kind of scored you this way and looked at some blood work and looked at your history. And then we're going to put you on, a high blood pressure medication because now it's been a year and a half since you were here and you've gained 15 pounds and now you're 45, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, and then that becomes all your focus is potentially I'm not concerned about my weight because I'm a man and I don't care about looking in the mirror.
Right.
And I take my blood pressure medication and I take my cholesterol medication and I'm fine. That's where I think it gets really tough to then have the conversation and meet somebody where they are, but also realize that the way you eat and the way you exercise or lack thereof has many health benefits and lifestyle benefits, besides just moving those two numbers, And the thing that comes tough, and it ties into what I talked about at the beginning with the daily struggle, is just your habits. My weight was good for years. It was because of my habits every day. And then you have kids and things start to unwind on you. Then you go the other way and your habits are bad. And then it does become hard to walk those things back. And that's, again, where I think it's just so individualized, meeting people where they are, what their ability is to deal with this psychologically, and what their ability is to make true lifestyle changes, because those come every day. They're little cheat codes now. We've got Ozempic and we've got these injectable weight loss drugs. They're a little bit of cheat codes that you can basically just inject once a week and you're going to lose some weight. But that's still not necessarily going to move the needle completely for you.
Right.
If you're 40 pounds overweight, you're not going to get in a weight range just by taking Ozempic. You're just, you're going to improve, but you're not going to get exactly where you need to be or want to be. But I think it is good to have those little crutches. I do.
Okay.
I don't even view the Ozempic thing as a crutch at this point. Do you know what I mean? I don't. And I'm not like harping on one little thing you said.
It's like saying a blood pressure med's a crutch. We've come to accept that it's just normal.
Yeah. I'm just, man, obesity in its, in terms of its later stages can just be absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And the quicker that somebody loses weight, the better. Just like the quicker you stop smoking, the better. The quicker you can get your blood sugar normalized, better. You know what I mean? All these things are, let's just say even your cholesterol levels, let's just say your 10-year risk of an event is very low. You don't really know what 20 years looks like. So you're better off just getting those numbers lower sooner the better. And so part of that is why I sort of believe that these medications they're game changers. They're not without issues, but I view them less as a crutch because, again, meeting somebody where they are, that's an opportunity for an intervention.
If it helps move the needle,
absolutely,
and get you going in the right direction.
Yes, for sure.
Fair enough. So
for sure,
I read a book recently that was talking about how there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, and so you're trying to make the best trade-off you can at any given moment. And so if that's the case, if the trade-off is here's this drug, it has risks, but the risks are lower than being morbidly obese, this makes sense. This is a good trade. Fair enough.
Yeah, at some point, if you're a doctor and you're seeing a patient and you've seen him every year for 10 years, 15 years, and he's just not going to change his lifestyle.
Yeah.
Then the trade-off is, he's not going to change. You take the medication. You know what I mean? And that's...
So for the listeners, for somebody that maybe is overweight or obese or even morbidly obese, what's the punchline?
The thing that jumps to mind is just that you need to know that this does not just boil down to a failure in willpower. Like it may have felt that was the finger that was being pointed at you for forever. So it's not a failure in a personal choice you've made. There is a complex underlying disease process, but like anything related to health and life in general, there still is a level of personal responsibility that's required to do what you need to do.
So how you got here isn't anywhere near as important as what you do from this moment.
Yep. And whether that's just asking your doctor about Ozempic, don't feel guilty, or asking your doctor about Wegovy. That for a while, I think people were just afraid to ask those questions again because maybe they felt like I want to do this without a crutch.
Right.
But don't even view it that way.
Right.
If you talk to your doctor, you're going to find out whether or not Ozempic or Wegovy or whatever the drug is even the right choice for you. But I think that's good enough, is just to get the conversation going. Because if you start to ask about these medications, invariably they're going to ask about what are some of the things you're doing, what's your diet look like, how are you sleeping.
Right.
It's just you are showing that you're ready to take the initiative.
Right.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Take a step.
Just ask.